I'm not a pussycat or Mickey Mouse. We are here to defend. War separates men from children. And we are men. I'm a man. I'm standing up and defending my country.
One of the most dangerous things in geopolitics is not an assassination. It's the warning that comes before it. Because on February 2nd, something happened that most of the world ignored. But Africa did not. Russia's top intelligence agency, the SVR, released a public statement accusing France of secretly authorizing the elimination of African leaders who refused to serve French interests. Not criticism, not sanctions. Elimination. And they didn't speak in general terms. They named names. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Colonel Assimi Goïta. Two young military leaders who had done the unthinkable. They expelled French troops, cut military ties with Paris, and turned their backs on the country that had dominated their region for over half a century. To some, they were heroes. To others, they were threats. But what happened next is what turned a shocking accusation into something far more chilling. Less than 24 hours later, reports emerged from Libya that Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of one of Africa's most controversial and powerful leaders, had been assassinated. No warning, no clear explanation, no answers. Just silence. And suddenly, Russia's warning didn't sound so abstract anymore. Coincidence? Maybe. But Africa has seen this pattern before. Leaders who challenged foreign influence, leaders who tried to take control of their own resources, leaders who stood alone, and then suddenly they were gone. So now, a new question is spreading across the continent. Is this happening again, or is this something else entirely? Because Russia doesn't need to prove anything for their accusation to work. They only needed Africa to hear it. They only needed Africa to remember its past. And most importantly, they only needed Africa to doubt France. This is no longer just about bullets. This is about belief. Because in modern geopolitics, the most powerful weapon isn't always a missile. Sometimes, it's a message. And right now, Africa is caught in the middle of a silent war, where the truth is unclear, the stakes are enormous, and the next move could change the balance of power on an entire continent. The only question is, was this a warning, or was it a preview? The reported killing of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi sent a wave of shock across Africa. His name alone carries history, power, and unfinished business. As the son of Muammar Gaddafi, he represented not just a political figure, but the possible return of a legacy that once challenged Western dominance on the African continent. But what made the situation even more unsettling was not just his death, it was the timing. Because less than 24 hours earlier, something happened that most of the world barely noticed. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Agency, the SVR, released an explosive public statement. In it, they accused France, under President Emmanuel Macron, of authorizing covert operations aimed at removing African leaders considered hostile to French interests. This was not a vague accusation. They named names. At the top of the alleged list were Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali. These were not random leaders. They were the faces of a new political wave in West Africa. Military governments that had expelled French troops, rejected French military protection, and publicly ended defense agreements that had existed for decades. They were part of a broader shift, a realignment of power in the Sahel, a region where France, once the dominant external force, was suddenly losing its grip, and where Russia was rapidly gaining influence. Then came the report from Libya. Saif Gaddafi was dead. No clear perpetrators. No transparent investigation. Just silence, speculation, and questions. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But in geopolitics, timing is rarely ignored. Because intelligence warfare is not just about actions. It's about perception. Russia understands this better than most. They understand that they don't need to prove France is planning assassinations. They only need to introduce the possibility into the global conversation. Because once doubt exists, trust begins to erode. And France's position in Africa has already been weakening. Over the past few years, French troops have been expelled from multiple countries. Military bases shut down. Defense agreements canceled. Crowds in African capitals waving Russian flags instead of French ones. This is not accidental. This is a power shift, and Russia benefits from accelerating it. This is what makes the SVR's accusation strategically powerful, regardless of whether it is true. It forces African populations to ask questions. It forces African leaders to think twice. It forces France onto the defensive. Not militarily, but psychologically. This is narrative warfare, and Africa is particularly vulnerable to it because of its history. The assassinations of leaders like Thomas Sankara, the killing of Patrice Lumumba, and the violent overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi himself. These events created a legacy of distrust, a belief, whether proven in every case or not, that powerful external nations intervene when African leaders challenge their interests. Russia positions itself as different. They present themselves as a partner, not a former colonizer. Unlike France, which ruled large parts of Africa for decades, this makes Russia's message easier for some audiences to accept, not because it's proven, but because it feels plausible. And plausibility is enough, because the most effective intelligence operations are not the ones you can see. They are the ones you can never prove. This is the paradox of covert power. If there were clear evidence, it wouldn't be covert. If there were fingerprints, it wouldn't be intelligence. So the question remains, did France actually plan anything? There is no public evidence proving that. But did Russia achieve something by making the accusation? Absolutely. They planted doubt. They shifted perception. They strengthened their narrative. And in modern geopolitics, controlling the narrative can be more powerful than controlling territory. Because influence begins in the mind, not on the battlefield. And right now, Africa is once again at the center of a silent war, not just between nations, but between stories.